Welcome to the Daily Ascent. I'm Molly Carmel, and this is the podcast that I always wish existed. A bite sized, on the ground, spiritual note that can shift your thinking and your outlook on life. Because sometimes that's all it takes, a small shift in what we choose to believe to make the day a little better and make us a little more awake, alive, and ascending. So each weekday, we're going to climb together. We're going to rise above the noise. We're going to find our flow. We're going to get grounded in what really matters so you can live your day with more meaning, connection, and ease. Today, I want to talk about something that I struggle with all the time. The way that one little moment can send me straight out of adulthood and right back into my teenage self. And how I can either stay stuck in that reaction or I can use it as an invitation to show up with an undefended heart. Not easy. Not easy. So last week, I was having dinner with my family. Those are my friends that have become my family. And I don't know if you've ever had like a family dinner or even a family dinner, but it's wild, right? Everyone's like getting ready, talking over each other. There's inside jokes flying. There's kids everywhere. It's like very loving chaos. But there's always this like feeling of safety underneath it all. I love it. And my beloved 15-year-old goddaughter, she's one of my greatest teachers, and she was there. And I love her so, so, so much. Literally, she's my teacher. She reflects back so much of my own stuff to me. She makes me more compassionate about myself. She teaches me. And, it's like an amazing thing to watch her grow from this tiny little human into this smart, brilliant, really devoted and hard knocks kind of young woman. And so she was there, and her mom, my very best friend, asked her to set the table. And she pitched a fit. She got her heels right down into the ground. She was committed to not setting the table. And she was being so rude and just unkind to my best friend. And so I chimed in, as I do. And I was like, girl, just set the table. Like, what is the big deal? It wasn't nice. It wasn't well thought out. I mean, it wasn't all that spiritual, but here we are. And without missing a beat, she turned her head at me and almost like with daggers coming out of her mouth, as only a 15-year-old can do. Like, shut up, Molly. Mind your own business. You're not even my mom. And let me tell you something, Ascenders. In that moment, my 48-year-old went to 13, 15, somewhere in that area, went to my teen self in 2 seconds flat. All my trauma came up, my jaw clenched, my eyes narrowed. And honestly, it was like the worst version. It was like my 48-year-old self actually melded with my 13-year-old self because my 13-year-old self probably would have like cowered and gone and binge ate. But my 48-year-old self was there too. And I thought to myself, oh, like you want to play? Okay, you want to play? You want to shoot insults down at me? Like I'll play. Clearly, this is the beginning of the podcast, not the end of the podcast. So I made this decision right there, nowhere near my wisest and highest and best self. I was not going to speak to her until she apologized to me. Like I was going to play the emotional blackmail game with my 15-year-old goddaughter. And I don't know if you've ever dealt with a strong-willed 15-year-old, but this we might have gone on with this freeze out until the end of days. So I after I did that and after I really made this commitment to sort of freeze her out, part of my warm, spiritual, awake, alive self came up. And by the way, in the midst of all of this, my two best friends, her parents were trying to get her to apologize. And she's like, I have nothing to apologize about. People on my side it was really messy. She was convinced she did nothing wrong. And eventually I was sitting in my room. I was really feeling righteous, but I was also feeling kind of awful. Just really untethered, just I was not feeling good about any of this. I was very hurt and just feeling icky. I know that's not a feeling, but here we are. But like I looked at my reaction and I saw it was so far from who I am and who I'm trying to be because my reaction was far from love. And I'm always trying to be the most loving version of myself, disgustingly imperfectly, but here we are. And I was so not about love in that moment. I was about like good, bad, winning, losing. And I was determined to win. And I was like really trying to heal some traumatic event that had happened to me in my life on a person that I love the most. And, I take this job of godmother very, very seriously. I have 8 godchildren. And I just was falling short of that role, to say the least. I believe that my sacred promise to her and all of my godchildren is to love them like God loves. And in my mind, that's like infinitely and without condition. And I was far from that mark. And so I did what you do with all 15-year-olds when you want to communicate best, which I texted her at 11:30 at night. I texted her and I shared with her that what she said hurt me, but what I did also was share with her that I didn't want to hold grudges and I wasn't going to hold a grudge. I didn't want to be teaching her that emotional blackmail is like an appropriate way to behave. And I told her what I just told you. I told her that my role was to love her like I think God loves, and that that is what I would do to the best of my ability till the day I die. And that, she didn't have to talk to me, but that I was here if she wanted to talk. And then I put the phone down and I let it be. And the next morning, I was in a meeting of peeps, other spiritual people, and this girl was talking about the Celtic prayer of approach. I'd never heard of this in my life. And obviously, I, not so spiritual again, kind of like got my phone and read this Celtic prayer of approach and nearly fell out of my seat. So let me read it to you, and I'll read it 2 times because it is wowza. So close your eyes, just listen. I honor your gods. I drink at your well. I bring an undefended heart to our meeting place. I have no cherished outcomes. I will not negotiate by withholding, and I am not subject to disappointment. One more time for those in the back. I honor your gods. I drink at your well. I bring an undefended heart to our meeting place. I have no cherished outcomes. I will not negotiate by withholding, and I am not subject to disappointment. So when I read this while I was in my meeting, I realized it wasn't about my goddaughter anymore. It was just holding up a mirror to so many parts of my life, in my relationships, at work, with friends, in traffic, even, with strangers. I mean, I can walk into a relationship with cherished outcomes. I can be really dependent on needing somebody to react a certain way, on somebody giving me a certain response, on like, I swear, even like validating me in a certain tone. And when it doesn't work out like that for me, I can so negotiate by withholding. It's like really top of my list as non-spiritual skills to pick up. I can withhold my warmth, my affection, my attention. I have a variety of tricks when it comes to this. Because I feel like I want to have the upper hand in that moment. Spirituality to me is so about trust. And when I get unsettled, it turns into a need for control. And how often do I find myself subject to disappointment, not because something terrible happened, but because it just like didn't match the script, the expectation that I'd been writing in my head. And so when I read that Celtic prayer, it wasn't like describing just this tense moment with my goddaughter. It was really like a pattern of my life. And I was so excited I was starting this podcast. It was a real sign to me, like, oh, look, lots and lots of context for you and the audience. Here we have it. And I can tell you, this is not a pattern that I want to be repeating. I can also tell you, this is a pattern I will be repeating. Like, I'm telling you, I want to remind you of this as long as I know you. Ascending is not just about getting up the mountain. Like, it's just life is not getting up the mountain. It's really getting up the mountain and then having to go back down a little bit and then going up. I mean, it's literally the only way we learn is by mistake. So if we just never make another mistake again, then we're probably living a very, very small life. Note that. So, an undefended heart, no cherished outcomes, no withholding, no disappointment. Very ideal. Very a wonderful thing to me moving towards. I don't know if I'll ever get there, but I'm going to try really, really hard because so much of our suffering, or at least my suffering in relationships, doesn't come from what people actually say or do. It comes from the stories that I attach to what people say or do or don't do, right? And it really comes from these scorecards that I find myself keeping without my permission. And these cherished outcomes, they're for me like emotional landmines because when my happiness, and I'll talk for all of us for a moment, when our happiness depends on needing somebody to behave exactly how I want, then I'm literally handing them my peace, right? And this withholding piece, it might feel like a boundary, but often it's a power play. It's a really good thing to look at. I see so many people having these boundaries that become armors. And the problem with putting on an armor, especially if it's a thick one, is that you can be banging on that armor, asking for help and asking for a connection, and nobody can hear you. And so I think it's a really important thing for us all to look at as we're walking, and trying to live this spiritual life, this life of trust and this life of connection and this life of love. Because there is a very fine line between setting a personal boundary and having it be like an emotional power play. And it will always starve our connection. So, you know, in an ideal world, I wish I approached my goddaughter with an undefended heart. I wish I could have said, gosh, that hurt, and then just still stayed connected to her. And let go of her needing to apologize and all of that, right? It maybe have saved me hours of stewing, but I really want to say this particular transgression and this particular moment was very life changing for me. And so I want to remind us all that living a messy life is, part of the deal of living a big, beautiful life. And I do want to say, although I'm sure not all stories will end this way, that the next morning I was downstairs in the kitchen and she came downstairs into the kitchen and kind of gave me a little bit of a side eye and then came over and said, I'm really sorry and I love you and hugged me. I mean, that's unbelievable if you have a 15-year-old. That's like basically the nicest thing that ever happened to me. But I think more importantly, I would have needed to be okay if she didn't do that, right? I would have needed to hold my truth and hold my role as a godmother. And if you have kids, I'm sure you know this too. Not as easy as it looks. So the word of the day is undefended. When I feel myself putting on an armor, whether that's a sharp tone or going silent or checking out, I am going to pause. I'm going to take a breath. I'm going to see what it feels like to walk into the moment without my shield up. Because when my shield is up, I cannot connect. That's the price of being too defended. So our word today is undefended. All right, Ascenders, thank you so much for climbing it with me today. Take this undefended, use it when you feel yourself gearing up for battle with your teenagers or tweenagers or coworkers, spouses, friends, or even just your own inner critic. I'm going to practice staying connected today, even when I want to keep score. And why don't we all try it together? And I'll see you tomorrow for another step upward. Bye.